that work?
Oh,
There we go. Hey,
hey,
Sarah.
that's better.
How you
Hey,
doing?
hi, good, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you
That's
taking the.
fine.
Yeah, no, you're wonderful. So, anyone who's in the U.S. or Canada, Sarah is joining us from the future. She's on Thursday time. We're on Wednesday time. So Sarah is joining us from Tasmania, and we are incredibly thankful. And so, a little intro to Sarah is she is the one who's been creating all of the amazing assets that you all have been lighting for the lighting challenges, the Sci-Fi City, the Mushroom Girl, the Boy and the Snail, all of the axolotl, who I think might have been one of our first projects together. Who I'm still so excited about it. I get axolotl advertisements on my social media now because I look them up so much, which is weird. And yeah, so she is an incredible modeler. She also does all the texture work and everything. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. First off.
You're welcome.
And secondly, I just kind of wanted to hear about what we always try and do is just talk to people about like how they got into this industry. So many of our students are kind of up and coming. So I kind of want to hear your story. Like, how did you get interested in CG and how did you first get started?
Well, you could say it was completely by accident. Um, Tasmania is very small. Our film industry is pretty much, well, it doesn't exist, you know. Um, I think it really started with my brother's video camera when I was, in my teens. Once I got a hold of that video camera, you know, I could see things.
Hmm.
You could do things. I was frustrated that people had better video cameras than me and they used them to take shaky pictures of birthday parties. And I'm like, you could do so much more with this. I was determined to be a director. And I'm like, right, bother starting small. I'm going to make a Star Wars fan film and I'm going to put, everything into it. And then I realized, making the whole film I might make the trailer first. And then I wanted to make the trailer so that I could impress the actors I wanted to get, all that sort of thing. There was an obvious problem, though, with that. Star Wars. It requires spaceships. It requires planets. It requires droids.
Yeah.
I was not going to be able to make miniatures that were good enough to do all of my beloved live action stuff. And the software I was using was called HitFilm. It had this weird little thing that talked about importing a 3D model. That's how ignorant I was. I was just like, 3D models, that's what big studios have, little, you don't have that. So I discovered the world of free models. It was cool, but the textures bothered me because I could never get them to look real. And there was this peculiar sort of flickering that would go on. Having exhausted all of my resources finding out what the flickering was, I then went online and discovered Greek. It was Greek to me. People were talking about inverted normals and doubles and what the heck is a vertex. And I'm just like, okay, this is just another world. I don't think I want to go there. But in the end, I was like, no, I have to go there because I have to fix this model. And I started seeing, I'm like, wait a minute, somebody made this at home? Some of the quality of the work that came up blew me away. And I was like, wow. So I did a bit more digging and ended up with a program called Blender, meaning to simply fix the models that I had. And then I was sort of like, oh. First of all, my heart sank because I opened the program and I was like, there are so many controls. What is this? I'm never going to learn this. This is terrible. I felt like I was drowning in information. And then I'm like, okay, just do the model, just fix the model. But then when I looked at it again, I'm like, I've got an entire studio in my hands right here. Rigs for cameras that I could never make myself at home. I was still thinking home here. The ability to light, the ability to make things, anything at all. I was like, oh, I might just shelve this whole movie idea and have a little bit of a look and see what I could do. It was just became an obsession, I'm afraid.
Mhm.
Just trying stuff, making stuff. Yeah, so it definitely was not planned, but getting into it professionally wasn't entirely planned either,
Mhm.
because I never thought, I thought people had to go to schools, they had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, they had to work on projects and build up that way, which is obviously a good thing to do, but it was impossible for me.
Mhm.
And I was also thinking, oh, old school, you have to have a really important reel to show people, otherwise studios, the idea of freelancing, I didn't know it existed. I really didn't know. After, quite a while, I was comfortable with the program by that stage. I got sick and I couldn't work, and that's scary. And I realized that in the condition I was in, I couldn't get a job. I certainly couldn't keep a job. So I had to make one. And I thought, okay, well, what can I do? So I looked at what I could do, and I figured, well, I had to have a job that I could work my own hours. And I had to have a job, preferably I could work from home if I had to. And I started poking around, how can you make money making 3D models? And I started getting, information, and I'm like, oh, don't want to do that. And then I thought, oh, okay. So I started very small stock images, started selling them. You're not going to make money doing stock images, I'll tell you that now. 20 cents an image for something that took you like all night to render is a bit depressing. Really, it is depressing. And then I had to grow, because I had to actually start selling my models, and that was scary because until that moment, it didn't matter if, the geometry wasn't perhaps all that good, and it didn't matter if the textures were a bit slapdash, but when it comes to selling and somebody else was going to actually have to light the model, and the UVs had better be right, and the textures had definitely better look right. Yeah, I really had to up my game and think a bit more about the deliverables for that. And again, you get up, you get excited, and then you're like, I'm not going to make my fortune just selling models either. And I'd kind of hit a roadblock because I didn't have a community as such. There was no exposure. It was just me and people who didn't know anything about 3D models who wanted to buy them, but also preferably wanted to spend no more than $10 on a model that they should be spending $300 on. Educating people as to how much these models actually cost is really quite challenging. So I stumbled upon ArtStation. I wanted something that had a good reputation because I wasn't here to play around. I was serious. So I didn't want DeviantArt or anything that had perhaps a lesser reputation. I was a bit embarrassed because I thought everybody was so much better than me. They were incredible, really good stuff. But for some reason, ArtStation let me go on, which was good. And just slowly started putting little bits of work up, little bits of this up. And, I started talking to other people. They started talking to me. And every now and then somebody'd say, oh, can you do this? And well, like you did, I got a wonderful text from you asking if you could do something. And I was like, oh, cool, So yeah, it was a slow, rather roundabout process, but I got there.
That's incredible. So I think you're kind of, this is something that people do when they talk about this. Like you talked about things like kind of happening per chance, or you kind of like flowed your way into it, but you had a lot of curiosity and a lot of confidence to be able to overcome the ability of opening Blender. Because I think we've all had that feeling of opening a 3D software package for the first time and being like, what is this? Like, I have no idea how to do any of this. It takes a lot to overcome that. And then also the additional challenges that you faced, like trying to create your own job for yourself that fit the life that you needed to create. I just wanted to commend you on, because I didn't know, I didn't know this story about you before, but like the curiosity and the ability to overcome obstacles is really quite inspiring to listen to. That's really really great. How long, like, when did you start? Like, when did you first start? Like, when did you start making the Star Wars
Oh, I'm really not sure about that, because
trail?
I've played around with the video camera for quite a few years. Um, because I mean, I didn't even have a computer when I started with the video camera. I literally had to do all the editing in my head
Mm-hmm.
and remember where I'd left off filming something and put it up. I think most of it was storyboarding on paper. Then I discovered the magic of computers and how you could edit. So we're talking, quite a few years away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it probably took me, 5 years of just bumbling around with Blender before I got to the stage where I thought I might show somebody else what I could do. Only because it was a hobby. It wasn't as if it was something I did all the time, even though I did do it most of the time. And it took a year at least of selling stock images
Mm-hmm.
for my presence on the internet to become noticed, which people sort of tell you but don't tell you in the beginning. You get all fired up, you think you're going to make it, and and if you're going to do that, and then you're like, what's going on? Nothing's going on. I would say you definitely need to give it a year. It sounds depressing, and 2 would be better. The thing is, if you keep plugging at it during those 2 years, you are in fact building, you are increasing, and you're increasing your productivity. But yeah, it is not something you're going to leap into straight away. It's just not going to happen, and I don't think it should. I think if you like the axolotl, that was the bunny.
Oh, the bunny,
The
yeah.
little animal, the bunny was the first
Bunny
one.
is where we started, yeah.
Bunny was the first one. If I had gone straight from hobbying, just doing it myself, to you offering me the bunny, I could have done it, but no, I couldn't have done quite the whole thing. It wouldn't have been a very neat package. I've still got to work on my neatness a little bit more with the packaging. It would have actually not have been all that good. It wouldn't have been good for you either.
Yeah.
So people, they have to be able to say, I mean, of course, every time you've offered me a new seat, I've gone, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, shut up and calm down. You can do this. So,
Well, it's that process of going through that a few times of like, I don't know how to do this. I
yeah,
don't know how to do this. And then you figure it out and you builds your confidence up a little bit so
yeah,
you can do the next challenge.
absolutely. You have to do it and do it in a real situation a few times first. So I wouldn't recommend people finding their dream project straight away, not unless they had genuine proven confidence, because you can be confident and not be able to do the job.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Like, you
Confidence
can do
all
that.
over the place. You don't have to worry about that.
Totally. And then it's just like, okay, that's not working.
That's great.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
So I want to talk about the 2 most recent models that you've made for us, or the Sci-Fi City, just because that's the one that students are working on now, and then I also want to talk to you about the bat, who's Desmond Rotundus. Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll talk about the city first, and let me just share my screen real quick just to show for those that don't who haven't. Oh wait, is that the right one?
Well, I'm still here.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
So just want to show some of the stills from I don't know if you can see these on my screen, Sarah. The stills from the city.
Yep, I can see.
Great. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about your approach to this, how you created. Let's go back to the whole city, like how you created this city and what were your thought processes, because specifically the scale of it, because I know that was something that we worked with, the idea of like, do we make it something that looks great from far away, something that looks great close up? Like, what were some of the challenges there for you?
Wow. I think the scale was one of the big challenges. I hadn't done anything quite this big before, but it's a city, and I was never sure exactly how people were going to uh, aim their camera. I really wanted it to be a bit of both. Really, most things look good from a distance, so I was pretty happy it would look all right from a distance. But as a modeler, I wanted to pack it with detail, and the bigger the scene got, I'm like, oh, I can't do this much detail. So I wanted to try creating as much modular as possible,
Mhm.
so that the people could mix and match, put as much or as little detail as they wanted in. I also wanted to create some big shapes and a few smaller ones, like the antenna that could be split into 3 pieces.
Mhm.
That could pretty quickly be used to build up some quite minute detail to be placed nearer the camera, because obviously the further out the camera got, the smaller details just disappeared. Um, the layout, I think, was probably what gave me the most problem. Not the individual buildings, but when I actually looked at it, I literally went back to the old piece of paper and a pencil and tried laying it out. That was, I don't know why that was so hard, but it was. Until I had an idea, like a character for the city, I couldn't lay it out. I'd seen the most of the shots that I saw from the original Blade Runner. I have seen the movie, but not recently, so
Mhm.
I'd forgotten that. Was about that wonderful round building. So I did want to make that sort of the center of the city, but an old center. I wanted the city to feel like it had organically grown, in the sense that when you start, you put all your effort into your Capitol building, but it's also the technology changes, improves, and those new buildings are likely to be taller, they're likely to be a different shape, they're probably made of glass rather than metal, they're further away rather than in the old section of the city. So I had to try and work out on a grid how that was going to occur, and also the power. I assumed that a city this size would include a lot of power, a lot of, I don't know, plumbing, all that's in, hence the industrial section. Yeah, I don't know why the layout was hard. Making the individual buildings wasn't hard. You basically started just imagining stuff and sticking it together, and working out little bits, you know, the little modular things that could be duplicated how many times
Mhm.
around a city to give it that cluttered look. The only thing I worried about was that I didn't quite get the scale as vast as the original buildings. The buildings almost looked like they should have been a kilometre or more tall, you know, like a distinct upper, middle, and lower city. I'm not sure that I got that in the buildings.
Yeah.
But again, I think for that it would have been better to have done a close-up model, like just of the streets, if you wanted to get that appearance, rather than trying to pack it all into one model. Yeah, that, I think the scale was probably the thing I was least happy with,
Mhm.
just because I wasn't sure that, you know, if you got a little person and put them in, if it would scale up right. But I was certainly seeing buildings in my sleep.
Yeah. That's a good indicator that you're doing a good job, or that you're focusing on
Do
it.
you really?
No,
I'm
I
like,
think
no,
that.
go away.
No. That's really interesting. Yeah, because it's like one of those things that, from because I'm not a modeler, and I look at things slightly. I'll look at something differently than you. I would have thought the detail would have been the difficult part, but it's interesting that the layout was the tough part. That's really cool. Um, Based on some, trying to ask. So you've created a lot of models for us over time, and we've done lighting challenges in the past. Do, the way that the lighting comes out in the end, is it kind of what you expected, or do the submissions surprise you?
Most of the time they surprised me, but blew me away.
Mhm.
It was fascinating to me that I could model something. I could even model it in a specific mood, and your students would come along and they would pull your eyes to somewhere else, or they would change the mood
Mm-hmm.
completely and utterly. Or they could, three of them could pick the same mood, but the color, the lighting, it was different. So no, I have never expected any of the lighting that the students did. Not really expected it,
Mm-hmm.
but no, they bring them to life, which is what really, really pleases me as the modeler. I'm sort of like, oh, I worked on this model. Is it rubbish? Is it crap? And then I'm like, oh, look at that. It breathes,
Yeah.
because again, I'm a modeler. I'm not a lighting artist at all. Even though I know that your lighting really can make or break the scene.
Well,
Um,
I mean, it all works together, because it doesn't matter
oh
how
yeah.
well you light something if the model or the shader isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Not no one component of a 3D scene can really save the other ones. They all kind of need to work together to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was there anything else about the city that um, surprised you, or you found like that kind of like something that you found fascinating about it as you were working on, or something that you would be interested, or maybe this something that you would be interested in this, seeing the students like highlight, like what were you thinking when you were creating it, like the mood and all that?
I was hoping for the sort of what do you call it? In the most of the images that you see, the vastness, there seems to be a fog
Mm-hmm.
and a dust and a mist, and it really produces a sort of depth of field
Mm-hmm.
that makes you think of steam, smog, and I think the buildings would look, particularly some of the detail
Mm-hmm.
clustered around in the buildings, just in the right, maybe in the mid-ground,
Mm-hmm.
to get at that really, it's not a clean, shiny city. It could be.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely could be, and I think it would look really good, pristine. But I'd be really interested to see the moody, dirty look about it. I mean, it would be also nice to think, oh, maybe this advanced civilization might be able to create such a city without creating all that pollution. But if we do want a little hint of realism, I think
Yeah.
that really was what I was thinking. Mainly because most of the images that I came up with, if you want to get the instant sci-fi, of course, there's all the different types of sci-fi. I didn't distinctly model this as the sort of clean Star Trekky. This is supposed to be slightly more earthy, slightly more, I would call it futuristic, i.e. let's take our civilization and spin it a little bit further, rather than thousands of years in another universe type of look. So
No, that's
I
really
think if they stuck to more realism than fantasy, just in keeping with the model. But I would be fascinated to see what anybody comes up with. Maybe they're going to put a bright blue sky and sunshine and have it sparkly. I don't know. I don't care. I'm just fascinated with all the different views. But I would like to see one, just to see what would happen if somebody put moods and cloud and dirt. I probably should have included more dirt in the models, but I didn't.
okay. We can do that too. We can add that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, there you go.
So great. So I wanted to talk about the character that you created. So just a little backstory. Yeah, the bat. So for you all watching, again, this is a future asset that you'll be getting soon in the next. Oh, so we'll do the Blade Runner or the Sci-Fi City this month and next month, and I'll probably do this one in June, and then the Harlem asset, which is something else that we made, maybe that in July, because I want to see this one. So this was the original design. Again, this was by Chris Ayers. Chris is a art director at Disney. And one of our students reached out to us and they were like, hey, I found this bat and I really love it. And I was like, yeah, it's great. And they're like, can we use it? Can we use this in one of the assets? And I was like, you know what? The same way I reached out to Sarah and was blown away by her response. I reached out to Chris and asked him if he could, and he was so kind. Our industry is so nice, is so generous. And he was like, yeah, sure, go for it. Just like, let me know what you need. And so I sent this, all I sent was this over to Sarah and was like, hey, Sarah, we'd really love to create this asset. So she came up with with this model, which we just absolutely loved. And so I'm working with it now. I'm playing around with the lighting of it now. And just like looking at the subsurface scattering and stuff. And we're really, really excited about this one. We think our students are going to have a lot of fun with it. But I just wanted to hear your approach to it, like how you started with this image and actually, I'll keep this on screen for a second. So what kind of things were you seeing in this when you started approaching this character?
Wow. Character was the first thing that hit me. I'm just like, wow, he is brilliant. Um, when I get an image like this, I tend to automatically start breaking him down into what I might need to do in order to achieve him. I sort of thought, all right, hat, stick, cloak, easy. They were put to one side because I knew they weren't going to be a problem. And I start looking at himself because with organics, I prefer to sculpt them digitally, digital clay and brushes.
I feel like, wait.
Have I lost you? No,
Oh
that's
no, we're
okay.
back. Okay.
He's got these he's got these wonderful, wrinkles around his nose and his cheeks come out. Oh, we right there? Yep. And I had absolutely no idea really what he looked like in profile. So I pulled a few, shapes around and said, no, this is silly. I actually went to the internet and I got as many images of a real bat as I could find. And I created a realistic bat head and a realistic wing before. Then I took that realistic bat head into Blender and started pulling the vertices about the vertex about. I started sculpting him from there, and because I knew there was no way I was going to get his profile, not from just one image on this shape. So that gave me the base that I needed to be able to move it. His body was funny, but it was quite, it's quite simple in its way. But again, I had to get some paper and figure out what his profile shape, like his neck's quite straight, but his little hips are thrust forward. I have to say, once it started to work, I just loved doing his face.
Yeah.
It was so funny, that little face. But the wings gave me the absolute worst time. The knuckles, easy. Yep.
What was it about the wings that was so difficult?
Looking at them the way they are, I was like, oh, that'll be easy. When I started creating that curved shape, I'm like, wait a minute, if I was to unfold this thing that I have now, that would not be a bat wing. Hence, I had to go and create a real bat wing, bend it around. And because I didn't have the wings starting from his hook, his little hook talon at the end, the way Chris did, it wasn't working. And I was like, oh my gosh, Chris has actually got this anatomically wrong. It looks great. And then I'm like, no, wait a second. Once I twisted it, I was just gobsmacked. I must have sat there for 10 minutes staring at the screen. He got it right. He got totally and anatomically correct. And I don't know how he did it. How did he draw? Because bats don't use their wings like that. How did he do it? And, then I shut up and I started redoing it again. The wings are also the one part in the model I didn't get the little knuckles in the wings, in the actual the wings. I should have pushed them a lot harder, and it wasn't really until I put him side by side with the original that I'm like, oh, look at that, I missed his little knuckles, if they're knuckles, these little jointy bits in the wings a bit more. But no, they were a nightmare and they shouldn't have been. And they were the hardest part, because the rest of him, it was just so fun to pull stuff around to make something with that much exaggeration.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was fun.
and even just like poking around with him a little bit in 3D, like his face is just so like, it's got so much, there's just so much richness and depth to his little face. You can really have a lot of fun with it. Like I was just taking, I did on Monday, I was playing around with, I was showing some camera and lens techniques, and I just took a wide angle lens and I just like pushed it up on his face and allowed everything to get like super distorted, and it can get really weird in there. It's a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love that model and I'm really excited about that. So that's really interesting, your approach. And it you touch upon something else too with a couple of the projects that you've talked about, is that um, you can't ever really achieve perfection in anything that like I've never lit a shot or been done with a shot for a film or for anything and been like, okay, like that one's done, I'm
Perfect.
100% happy with it, I'm totally satisfied, I did everything perfectly. Like you touched upon something, which is like you got to let some things go sometimes. So I thought that was very interesting. So you've had a really interesting like introduction into this industry. You've created a nice little niche for yourself. I'm sure there are people that are watching this that are wondering, and if you all have questions, feel free to put them in the Facebook comments or in the Zoom chat window, and I can grab those. But my question to you would just be, like, if you could, I guess, go back and give yourself advice for when you were first starting, or if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I want to be where you are in a few years," like how, like what advice would you give them?
Know your software.
Mm-hmm.
Pick your software. Know your software, but also you've got to be flexible. Like the best modeling always comes out of when I am feeling the emotional connection to the model. But you're not going to feel that way all the time. You are going to have, off days. And that's where your actual skill, your actual discipline is going to come in, whether whether you can model. So I'd say definitely, whatever your software is, however you do it, never stop learning how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you know how to use it. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen if you keep working at it. So if you're not expecting a miracle cure, you will build it. It's a long, it's a deep building, and you'll have just this foundation, and you'll be able to build off it. I would say always keep learning, always keep looking. I didn't know and didn't have access all those years ago to the tutorials. There are tutorials, there are forums, there are places where you can. And you said, which I had always thought too, our industry is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a nasty person. People might get there, at the Academy Awards and say that men are overrepresented and women aren't. And I'm going, what are you talking about? I haven't met a single guy anywhere in this industry who has treated me any differently than he does the bloke next door. We don't think, oh, you can't tell me what to do. You're a man. How dare you tell me what to do? We don't think like that. So get out. Don't be afraid to ask people. Of course, there's going to be some people that aren't, but they're not going to last very long. Not in this industry, they're not. We're all about giving someone else a hand. So if you see someone who has a really, really good art and you've thought about it, because it's not always very helpful to have someone say, oh, wow, marvelous work, and that's it. You're like, oh, that's good, thank you. Comment on someone and try and comment on why you think their job is good. Try and get in a dialogue with them, and don't be afraid to ask them. Obviously, I'm like, these are artists, I can't bother them. They might not, get back. And I sort of poked a question and they came back and I'm like, oh, they answered.
Mm-hmm.
Ask questions, always keep learning, because you're never going to run out of things to learn. And if you get tired, take a break. I've burnt out several times, and I actually had to forbid myself to open Blender, because I just, like, instinct, you get a cup of tea, I sit down and I'm like, Blender, I'm like, nope, you can't do that. It's not a failure. if you've overloaded or if you're tired. I mean, every single day you have to sleep, you have to rest. So it's really good to take 1 or 2 days off if you possibly can. So, because I was like, oh, I've broken, I obviously can't handle the strain, I'm a failure. No, no, you're not. There's loads of help out there, go look for it. But also, don't expect to be spoon-fed the whole time. You have to step out on your own. Some of the tutorials that I follow, they don't always show you absolutely everything, but they usually have already shown you the techniques that you need to achieve this. You don't need a walkthrough just because he hasn't shown you how to do every single little thing. People have to think, I'm going to do this on my own one day. I may as well start, you know. Don't expect to be spoon-fed. You have to step out there and you have to do it yourself. I sometimes thought, well, how would you go about teaching another person to model? And I'm like, I don't know. I just modeled, you know, and I'm like, well, how would you? And when I pretended that I had somebody else to teach, I realized there were whole gaps that I actually didn't know about.
Mm.
Little things that I didn't know about. So I'm like, okay, so if you're going to do that, if it helps, pretend you're going to teach somebody the fundamentals of a very basic camera lighting setup. I don't know, a 3-point lighting, and see if you know enough to teach somebody. Always keep pushing yourself.
No,
I would say that was it.
that's incredible. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like what you said about asking people questions, and then I think your approach is really good to not just say, "Hey, I like your work. Can you help me?" It's like go into specifics. Why do you like their work? What are some components? Because the way that you talked about your own work and the detail that you put into it is the same detail that other people will do as well. And if somebody comes to you and they're like, "Hey, I really, I really appreciate this detail that you put in. Could you like you're much more willing to help them if you can feel like they're appreciating the work that you did too.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great. Well, the comments that we've been getting are basically just people. Other Australians are excited that you're Australian. That's a really good one. People are excited about the axolotl, of course, and all of the other incredible models that you created. But Sarah, go ahead.
Name the axolotl. Sorry, can you put up a poll and name the axolotl? Because I love that little axolotl. Who needs a name?
Do you have a suggestion for a name?
Nope, no suggestions. I just think he or she, whoever it is, he needs a name.
It's funny. I alternate between calling him he and she in like comments and in reviews because I don't know. So I'll just mix it up. And sometimes even in a critique, I'll just hop back and forth between. I will make a poll tomorrow in our Facebook group to see what the name should be. That's a great idea. And the other thing I wanted to say was how open you've always been. If there's like questions that people have about the assets that you've created, or if you like feedback for future things, you've always been really great about that. So I would encourage anyone to reach out to us, post in the Facebook group, and we'll make sure to get that to Sarah so that she can answer your questions that you may have. But Sarah, I've had the opportunity to work with you for over a year now, and this past week or so has been the first time we've sat down and actually talked. And it is such a pleasure to talk to you. You're such an inspirational person. You have like such a good story and such a good vibe that I'm so excited that we were able to do this. So I'm not able to end this without like lots of times when I do interviews, I can end it for the public, but I can like keep you on to say thank you. I don't know how to do that with this. So when I end this, I'm just ending this. So this is my heartfelt, honest to God. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been a joy to work with you. Your enthusiasm for these assets is it gets me motivated, and I get so excited because I'm always like, we'll brainstorm stuff from our end and we'll send it over to you. And I'm like, I hope this is okay. I hope she likes this. And then you always come back with like, you always plus it. And you're always like, oh, well, what if we also do this? And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I always get like, you make it more exciting for me and for Jasmine and for our students. And I can't thank you enough for everything that you do for us. So, yeah. So thank you again. And if you have any questions, and we'll get that axolotl name for you, but all right, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. I'm going to go to bed now so I can get to Thursday, and we'll be good.
Okay.
Take it easy, everyone. Thank you again so much.